When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. Life is too short for long-term grudges. Some people don't like change, but you need to embrace change if the alternative is disaster. If something's important enough, you should try. Even if the probable outcome is failure. I'd rather be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right. Patience is a virtue, and I'm learning patience. It's a tough lesson. If you get up in the morning and think the future is going to be better, it is a bright day. Otherwise, it's not. I would like to die on Mars. Just not on impact. If you're trying to create a company, it's like baking a cake. You have to have all the ingredients in the right proportion. I think it's very important to have a feedback loop, where you're constantly thinking about what you've done and how you could be doing it better. I think that's the single best piece of advice. Constantly think about how you could be doing things better. People work better when they know what the goal is and why. It is important that people look forward to coming to work in the morning and enjoy working. I think it matters whether someone has a good heart. It's okay to have your eggs in one basket as long as you control what happens to that basket. Great companies are built on great products. People should pursue what they're passionate about. That will make them happier than pretty much anything else. I think you should always bear in mind that entropy is not on your side. I think there should be regulations on social media to the degree that it negatively affects the public good. We're running the most dangerous experiment in history right now, which is to see how much carbon dioxide the atmosphere can handle before there is an environmental catastrophe. When I was in college, I wanted to be involved in things that would change the world. I think that's the single best piece of advice. Constantly think about how you could be doing things better and questioning yourself. Brand is just a perception, and perception will match reality over time. Sometimes it will be ahead, other times it will be behind. But brand is simply a collective impression some have about a product. Rockets are cool. There's no getting around that. To make an embarrassing admission, I like video games. That's what got me into software engineering when I was a kid. I wanted to make money so I could buy a better computer to play better video games, nothing like saving the world. Any product that needs a manual to work is broken. I really do encourage other manufacturers to bring electric cars to market. It's a good thing, and they need to bring it to market and keep iterating and improving and make better and better electric cars, and that's what's going to result in humanity. Really, the only thing that makes sense is to strive for greater collective enlightenment. Self-driving cars are the natural extension of active safety and obviously something we should do. Starting a business is not for everyone. Starting a business, I'd say, number one is have a high pain threshold. I will never be happy without having someone. Going to sleep alone kills me. I always invest my own money in the companies that I create. I don't believe in the whole thing of just using other people's money. I don't think that's right. I'm not going to ask other people to invest in something if I'm not prepared to do so, Maye. It's very important to like the people you work with. Otherwise, your job is going to be quite miserable. I think life on Earth must be about more than just solving problems. It's got to be something inspiring, even if it is vicarious. The reality is gas prices should be much more expensive than they are because we're not incorporating the true damage to the environment and the hidden costs of mining oil and transporting it to the US. Whenever you have an unpriced externality, I don't create companies for the sake of creating companies, but to get things done. I think it's very important to have a feedback loop, where you're constantly thinking about what you've done and how you could be doing it better. If we drive down the cost of transportation in space, we can do great things. We're already cyborgs. Your phone and your computer are extensions of you, but the interface is through finger movements or speech, which are very slow. When Henry Ford made cheap, reliable cars, people said, "Nah, what's wrong with a horse?" That was a huge bet he made, and it worked. When I was a child, there's one thing I said: I never want to be alone. That's what I would say. I don't want to be alone. I think we are at the dawn of a new era in commercial space exploration. The factory is the machine that builds the machine. If I'm not in love, if I'm not with a long-term companion, I cannot be happy. I do love email. Wherever possible, I try to communicate asynchronously. I'm really good at email. If you're entering anything where there's an existing marketplace, against large, entrenched competitors, then your product or service needs to be much better than theirs. It can't be a little bit better, because then you put yourself in the shoes of. If you go back a few hundred years, what we take for granted today would seem like magic: being able to talk to people over long distances, to transmit images, flying, accessing vast amounts of data like an oracle. These are all things that would If humanity doesn't land on Mars in my lifetime, I would be very disappointed. I say something, and then it usually happens. Maybe not on schedule, but it usually happens. Tesla is here to stay and keep fighting for the electric car revolution. An asteroid or a supervolcano could certainly destroy us, but we also face risks the dinosaurs never saw: an engineered virus, nuclear war, inadvertent creation of a micro-black hole, or some as yet unknown technology could spell the end of us. We can't have, willy-nilly proliferation of fake news. That's crazy. You can't have more types of fake news than real news. That's allowing public deception to go unchecked. That's crazy. The problem is that in a lot of big companies, process becomes a substitute for thinking. You're encouraged to behave like a little gear in a complex machine. Frankly, it allows you to keep people who aren't that smart, who aren't that creative. In order to have your voice be heard in Washington, you have to make some little contribution. There's a silly notion that failure's not an option at NASA. Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough. A company is a group organized to create a product or service, and it is only as good as its people and how excited they are about creating. I do want to recognize a ton of super talented people. I just happen to be the face of the. The value of beauty and inspiration is very much underrated, no question. But I want to be clear, I'm not trying to be anyone's savior. I'm just trying to think about the future and not be sad. I'm interested in things that change the world or that affect the future, and wondrous, new technology where you see it, and you're like, wow, how did that even happen? How is that possible? To the CEO's office should not be through the CFO's office, and it should not be through the marketing department. It needs to be through engineering and design. You could warm Mars up, over time, with greenhouse gases. The problem with car dealerships is you've already decided what you want to buy before you even go there, and you're really just going there to talk through some annoying negotiation. My opinion is it's a bridge too far to go to fully autonomous cars. With artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram in the holy water, and he's like, yeah, he's sure he can control the demon? Doesn't work out. Wouldn't say I have a lack of fear. In fact, I'd like my fear emotion to be less because it's very distracting and fries my nervous system. Man has the power to act as his own destroyer, and that is the way he has acted through most of his history. The key to making things affordable is design and technology improvements, as well as scale. I hate writing about personal stuff. I don't have a Facebook page. I don't use my Twitter account. I am familiar with both, but I don't use them. I tend to approach things from a physics framework. And physics teaches you to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. I don't spend my time pontificating about high-concept things. I spend my time solving engineering and manufacturing problems. A utility can handle up to 20% of production from solar, and that helps the grid because it produces electricity when needed. Solar power peaks in the middle of the day, and that's also when air conditioning is running and businesses are operating, so I'm a Silicon Valley guy. I just think people from Silicon Valley can do anything. If you don't have sustainable energy, you have unsustainable energy. The fundamental value of a company like Tesla is the degree to which it accelerates the advent of sustainable energy faster than it would otherwise occur. We are the first species capable of self-annihilation. I think there are more politicians in favor of electric cars than against. There are still some that are against, and I think the reasoning for that varies depending on the person, but in some cases, they just don't believe in climate change. I had so many people try to talk me out of starting a rocket company, it was crazy. Mars is the only place in the solar system where it's possible for life to become multiplanetarian. The United States is definitely ahead in culture of innovation. If someone wants to accomplish great things, there is no better place than the US. Particularly Instagram, people look like they have a much better life than they really do. People basically seem like they are way better looking than they really are, and they are way happier seeming than they really are. As you heat the planet up, it's just like boiling a pot. I do think there is a lot of potential if you have a compelling product and people are willing to pay a premium for that. I think that is what Apple has shown. You can buy a much cheaper cell phone or laptop, but Apple's product is so much better. I do think there should be some regulations on AI. I'm anti-tax, but I'm pro-carbon tax. If we could do high-speed rail in California just half a notch above what they've done on the Shanghai line in China, and if we had a straight path from LA to San Francisco, as well as the Milk Run, at least that would be progress. I usually describe myself as an engineer. That's basically what I've been doing since I was a kid. The space shuttle was often used as an example of why you shouldn't even attempt to make something reusable. But one failed experiment does not invalidate the greater goal. If that was the case, we'd never have had the light bulb. If anyone thinks they'd rather be in a different part of history, they're probably not a very good student of history. Life sucked in the old days. People knew very little, and you were likely to die at a young age of some horrible disease. I was born in Africa. I came to California because it's really where new technologies can be brought to fruition, and I don't see a viable competitor. In order for us to have a future that's exciting and inspiring, it has to be one where we're a spacefaring civilization. America is the spirit of human exploration distilled. I don't think it's a good idea to plan to sell a company. In the early days of aviation, there was a great deal of experimentation at a high death rate. It's not as though we can keep burning coal in our power plants. Coal is a finite resource, too. We must find alternatives, and it's a better idea to find alternatives sooner than wait until we run out of coal, and in the meantime, put God knows how. A battery by definition is a collection of cells. So the cell is a little can of chemicals. And the challenge is taking a very high energy cell, and a large number of them, and combining them safely into a large battery. If you want to grow a giant redwood, you need to make sure the seeds are okay, nurture the sapling, and work out what might potentially stop it from growing all the way along. Anything that breaks it at any point stops that growth. I've been to Disneyland, like, 10 times. I'm getting really tired of Disneyland. Boeing just took $20 billion in 10 years to improve the efficiency of their planes by 10%. That's pretty lame. I have a design in mind for a vertical liftoff supersonic jet that would be a really big improvement. If anyone has a vested interest in space solar power, it would have to be me. Facebook is quite entrenched and has a network effect. It's hard to break into a network once it's formed. Land on Mars, a round-trip ticket, $500,000. It can be done. Tesla is becoming a real car company. I've actually not read any books on time management. Over time I think we will probably see a closer merger of biological intelligence and digital intelligence. There are some important differences between me and Tony Stark, like I have 5 kids, so I spend more time going to Disneyland than parties. Biofuels such as ethanol require enormous amounts of cropland and end up displacing either food crops or natural wilderness, neither of which is good. The goal of Tesla is to accelerate sustainable energy, so we're going to take a step back and think about what's most likely to achieve that goal. It is definitely true that the fundamental enabling technology for electric cars is lithium-ion as a cell chemistry technology. In the absence of that, I don't think it's possible to make an electric car that is competitive with a gasoline car. I'm reasonably optimistic about the future, especially the future of the United States, for the century, at least. The future of humanity is going to bifurcate in 2 directions, either it's going to become multiplanetary, or it's going to remain confined to one planet and eventually there's going to be an extinction event. I think Tesla will most likely develop its own autopilot system for the car, as I think it should be camera-based, not LiDAR-based. However, it is also possible that we do something jointly with Google. Nobody wants to buy a $60,000 electric Civic. But people will pay $90,000 for an electric sports car. You need to live in a dome initially, but over time you could terraform Mars to look like Earth and eventually walk around outside without anything on. So it's a fixer-upper of a planet. There's nothing, I've bought everything I want. I don't like yachts or anything, you know, I'm not a yacht person, and I've got pretty much the nicest plane I'd want to have.